Hello there, this is Dave Motorhead again out in the garage. Getting ready to take the engine out of the 63. Did the overview on it the other day, and well, let's take the engine out of this car. So let me put the hat cam on and I'll get right to it. Okay, been a long time since I've done a hat cam vid. Had a lot of technical problems and hopefully I can remember how to do this. Anyway, the first thing we want to do when taking the engine out of a 63 is, or an early model, is I keep the car on the ground and I disconnect everything in the engine compartment here. And you know, the first thing I'm going to do is undo these little bales right here and take the air cleaners off. And I'll get me a coffee can to put parts in, because here's a coffee can over here. What I do is I usually try to keep all the engine compartment stuff on the top side in one can and everything underneath in the other can. And I wonder if we're going to have any mice come out of this thing. Well, there's droppings of a mouse, but anyway, you want to disconnect all this stuff. And yeah, look at those carburetors, they're all kind of rusty. And anyways, you want to pull the air cleaner stuff off like this and get it out of the way. I don't like this air cleaners, and I'm going to take it off and set those to the side. I'll put these up in the trunk later for storage. And then I'm going to look down here in the carburetors and see they look pretty crusty. Okay, now that I got the air cleaners off, I look around in here and I see a bunch of stuff everywhere. I don't like working on dirty engines, so the next thing I'm going to do, which I won't videotape, is I'm going to take the shop vac and start sucking all this stuff out of there, because I don't like it. So I'll be back with you. I'll be back with you when I'm done vacuuming up this mess. Okay, we got our engine compartment all vacuumed out, and the next thing I'm going to do on this particular engine before I take it out is I'm going to take the carbs off. Carburetor's are going to need to be rebuilt anyways, and you know, so what the heck, I might as well pull them off now just to get them out of the way. And anyway, the first thing you want to do is disconnect everything that has to do with the end of the carb, like the little choke guys. And this one here is missing the clip, but this one's missing the clip. I can just usually get these off with my finger, pull that clip off and throw it in my coffee can. And then I'm going to want to get these guys off, the fuel lines, and you want to use yourself a flared line wrench like that. Hopefully I'm catching this on camera. It's got all the sides on it so it doesn't strip those out. And then I take myself a 1-inch guide too, and this usually makes it easy. What you want to do is you want to get the wrench on there, on the big nut, and then you want to position the other wrench on the other nut, and you want to see, like this way it fits like that. That's too far. And so this way it fits like, let's see if I can get this on there. Let me get this on there first. Okay, it fits like that. Okay, now you see what we've got here. We've got them sideways like that. Actually, this one I want to take off the other way. Anyway, you want to, that one came off easy. So that was no big deal. So I can almost take this one off by hand. But you want to use the flare nut wrench to make sure that you don't strip this out, because people are always using vice grips and stuff like that. Okay, that one's undone. And usually what I do, what I was trying to explain on the other one, was put this wrench on there and then get the other wrench positioned in a way where you can take them like that and you can squeeze it with both hands. You could just, there it goes, squeeze it, and then they work against each other, and you know, then you can just get right off, and this big nut doesn't spin around. But these things are a little bit sticky. I usually have another opening wrench with me after I break it loose with the line wrench, but I don't have it with me right now. I could walk over to the toolbox and get it, but I'm here and this one doesn't come undone finger tight, of course, so I'm wasting video space. Anyway, so that gets that one out of the way, and that's disconnected. Then you want to disconnect the spring, which this one's already disconnected. The throttle shaft spring, which is supposed to clip onto that little guy right there, but we'll show you that when we're putting this back together. So we got our throttle spring, throw that in there, and then we want to disconnect the throttle rod, and then pretty much, and these carburetors won't even budge, look at that. So this is all disconnected, they won't open, so those carburetors pretty much had it. They're going to need to be rebuilt. And then what I do is I take a little 1/4 inch drive ratchet with a long deal on it, a little 1/2 inch socket, and break these nuts loose. Well, that one's finger tight. And then there's another one down in here deeper. You can see it down in there. You just want to get on that sucker, and with this little wrench it fits in between everything, and you can just undo it. And you can get a magnet too and get in there with a magnet and get those out, but sometimes you can get your finger on there. And toss those nuts in the bucket. And basically what we're doing here is we're disconnecting everything that's on top of the engine compartment. And then we'll go ahead and do this one too while we're here. Boy, these things were completely finger tight. Not even any pressure to get that off. And get that washer off there too if we can. And we'll get down in here. This one's a little harder to see. The propel. So you have to go past that and then get on it. Get this hose out of the way. You need to disconnect that hose also. Let's get this nut out of there. Hopefully we got it. That's where the magnet comes in handy. Let me grab the Moto Head super magnet. I think I got a super magnet in here. I got two magnets actually. A small magnet and a big magnet. This is the telescoping magnet. And we want to get that nut out of there. There's the nut, and we want to get the washer. Come on, washer. And there's the washer. I always keep these magnets around because they come in handy. You don't want to drop the washers and stuff down inside there. Okay, so those are the washers. Then we need to disconnect this hose here, which is your vacuum advance hose, and then you can just pull these carburetors right out of there and be done with the carburetors. Pull them out as a unit, and we'll set them up on this bench here to rebuild later. And then I like to keep tops to the little carb cleaner cans laying around so I can plug the holes up, because I don't want stuff to fall down inside there. And then the next thing we're going to do is remove this PCV pipe. Of course, it's got one of those crazy clamps on there that everybody hates, the super double spring clamp. You really got to just kind of move that thing up out of the way, get it off of there. Sometimes you're going to have to move it, but anyway, it's off the surface, so I'll pull that off. This will go up in the trunk to be reinstalled later. We'll throw that over here on the bench. And then the next thing we want to do is disconnect some wires. And hopefully this is the right size. Probably not. It's all right. You always want to hold your finger on there when doing these wires. You can use a regular wrench, but I've got this wrench sitting here, so I might as well use it. And what I do is I disconnect these things. And usually there's a little washer on top, which is right there. And then I go ahead and put the nut back on. If I can get my finger out of the way. I'll put the washer and the nut back on where I took it off. And get rid of these. And this one, I don't know, it might have an extra wire. So you put your thumb there to keep it from spinning around so you won't hurt that terminal. So we want to do that. This one's a little tough. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I need to show you guys this stuff or not. I mean, it's pretty basic, but I'm just showing you the way I do it. This is going to be a 47.5 million part video, so You know, I guess I'll break it down into so many parts that I won't need to worry about the length it takes. Okay, so we got those off. So you just start at one end and you work yourself around. So those wires are disconnected, then we'll have to take that other guy off. But now we're going to disconnect these wires. This is the starter wires, because those go down in there. And we're just going to clip this wire because it's going on the starter. We might just have to go down there and disconnect that off the starter. Actually, we could disconnect it up here, but we might do that from underneath. And then we want to take the ground strap off, which is right here, and that looks like a 9/16 or so. We'll grab us a 9/16 socket out of the handy duty toolkit. See if we can get in there and take that bolt off. Trying to do this fast, but you know, good things take time. Good things come to those who make videos and wait for Corvairs. So you want to take that off because it's connected underneath that generator right there, and we don't want it sitting there. And then so we're just working our way around the engine compartment. And then next we come over here. What's the next thing? Okay, these wires. This is the temp overheat light sender down there, and then we've got the I think I got the correct wrench here. We've got the coil wire. I always like these little magnet things here. We'll just go down in here and disconnect this coil wire if we can. I always put my finger on there because you don't want the whole post to spin. Usually there's two posts there, or two nuts on the post, and you don't want to. Okay, that one's off there. Actually, this one I could just put the nut back on because it was a split thing. All I really need to do is loosen that. But I'll throw it back in there later when I don't got my gloves on. Put that nut in there. Come on, nut. Of course, we get a nut that doesn't want to come out. I ain't gonna worry about that for right now. Anyway, so that's disconnected, and then we go around here, and it looks like we have to disconnect an added ground wire. I'm not sure that these things have this ground wire on there or not stock. It looks like somebody might have added that. But we'll get up in there, and we're going to take that retainer off anyways, and we'll just take that and toss it in there. That gets that wire out of the way. And then I'm going to roll me up a little bit of paper towel here into a little paper towel burrito, as we call them. The paper towel burrito. And I want to stick it down in here because I don't want junk going down in that hole. Well, that thing's all stripped out and loose. And then we're going to want to take I think I got the right size here. I'm going to take this hose off. I'm using this one wrench for pretty much everything. But we want to disconnect this because it'll tear it up, and this hose looks like it's in okay shape. So we want to loosen this old GM clamp and take this hose off. But sometimes you just can't. Yeah, that hose is just going to fall apart. It's so old, you just touch it and it just falls apart. So we'll end up replacing that hose. But on a new vehicle, you can take that off, and I'm probably going to have to take that off anyways. See, it just ain't nothing left of that. So we'll just throw this in the trash can because I tried to save it, but it was unsavable. I should get me some wire cutters. Let me grab the wire cutters, and you guys wanted to see what's involved in this, and well, this is what's involved, and that's the super organized motor head cabinet there. We'll just cut this wire right off. I'm going to block that off anyway, so I won't even replace that unless somebody wants me to, because my standard deal on those fresh air hoses is just to block them off, and because I personally don't feel that they're needed for anything other than looks. And then we're going to have to take this retainer off here, because that holds this top seal on, and the other seal retainers go off from the bottom. And then once we take that retainer off there, we'll pretty much be done in the engine compartment, because if you look around, everything's disconnected. You know, we're going to have to take this one. Actually, I can unbolt it from here, and most times you just take it all out together, but anyway, if you look around, everything is disconnected around the perimeter, and that's what you want. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off, and then I'll jack this car up and resume once I'm underneath. Okay, I went ahead and pulled the terminal off this wire here, so it'll come out, and then I'm going to pull that retainer off still, and just wanted to show you something that, you know, if you use one of these things, it's kind of hard to get in there. Like when you're down here, and you know, it's like that, and you can't get a good angle on that. And that's why you should buy one of these. It's a spring-loaded dude, and you can just get in there at any weird angle. You can get in there like that, and you can just undo these bolts, take them off, and you know, a good tool is like this one here is a tough one. You just get in there and start twisting, and it comes right out. You can get a different angle like that. So I thought I would revive a little bit of vid here to show you my cool tool, because I like cool tools. And anyways, so yeah, get one of these things. I got a couple of different ones, but I'm going to take that retainer off, and then we'll jack this car up and go underneath it. Okay, we've got the engine compartment all ready to come out now, and I've got this thing jacked up off the ground here, if you can see, and I try to jack it up as high as I can get it, so that way I have enough room for the engine to come out the bottom. And I'll go over the jacking points once I do something else. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the wheels off. Once it's off the ground, I like to take these wheels off to get it out of the way, and so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I don't think I need to show you guys how to take wheels off, but with these kind of hubcaps, it's kind of hard to get in there and get an angle on it, so I use one of these guys like this, and usually they just come right off, and I've got me a nice hubcap right there. And then I'll grab me some 30-30, CalGuard 30-30, and put a little bit of lube on those nuts. Come on, 30-30, because they've been in Kansas for, you know, 38 years, I think is what I come up with. Put a little lube on there, and then I want to grab me my handy-duty Ryobi 3-speed impact wrench that my son got me for my birthday. And I'll go ahead and take those lug nuts off. And I love this thing. This thing's great because it's great for when I'm out digging a car out of a field. So anyway, I'm going to take this wheel off, and I'll take the next wheel off, and I'll be right back with you. See, there's a dent right there for the wheel to lean up against like that, and that's pretty crusty looking in there. If you look at that, it's got a little bit of Kansas rust. Actually, once I start looking underneath this thing, I'm finding lots of rust on it. So I mean, I don't know how bad rust is back there, but out here I don't see rust very often, so this might be an interesting video by the time I'm done. Anyway, I'm going to take the other wheel off, and I'll get right back with you. Also, something to note here is these tires. I mean, look at this tire. It's a Ward's, and I'm assuming that's Montgomery Ward's, but look at the tread on this old, it's a glass, it's like a brand new tire, and it's a Ward's glass belt. It says glass belt. It's upside down. Look at this one. It's about ready to explode. It's got a big old deep gash right there, and it's all falling apart right there. But you know, that tells you one thing about this car, that those are brand new tires on this thing that are, you know, 35, 40 years old probably. And back when they were put on this car, Those were the going tire. So that kind of lets you know the last time this car was driven. All right, I'll be right back with you. Okay, one thing about jacking these cars up, see we got it jacked up, is right up in there is a jacking point, kind of like right up in there. That's where there's a little plate welded across there, and actually right there is where you want to jack it up, like right by that pinch weld. And that's where you jack them up, and then I like to put the jack stands underneath the suspension crossbar right there and hold it up, and I try to get it jacked up as high as I can. And those are the ones holding the car up right now, and then I got an extra one on each side just in case one of these lets loose for some unknown reason. I always like to have another different kind of stand there for backup. So anyways, that's where you place the jack stands on these early models. At least that's where I do it, and they haven't fallen on me yet, so I'll be right back with you. Okay, I'm back with you now, and this car is an automatic. And the first thing I do with automatics when I'm getting ready to take the engine out is drain the transmission. You got to drain the transmission when you're taking the engine out of one of these things. And so we're going to do that right now. And it's kind of scaring me because I pulled the dipstick and it's halfway up the damn dipstick. And I know these things drain down. And what you're looking at right there, that is the fill tube. And they don't have a drain. So what you want to do is put yourself a pan underneath there. I hope that pan's big enough, because I don't know how full this stupid thing is, because it's kind of scaring me. It's got brown transmission fluid. Let me put my hat cam on here. And I'm putting my special gloves on. And hopefully this stuff doesn't... These are special Harbor Freight super nitrile gloves. The cheapest ones they make. And sometimes this nut is hard to break loose if you've been trying for a while. I can't get any traction on my feet. Let me get this sucker on there. It's been on there since probably, I don't know if it's ever been taken off. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the super persuader. We're going to wedge this another wrench on there. If you look at that, boy, that's some leverage right there. It should just pop. See, look at that. All that extra leverage, and it comes right off. And the reason you want to drain these things is because when you take the engine out of an automatic, you have to pull the shift cable out of the tranny. And if you pull the shift cable out without draining them first, look at that crusty old stuff. It's brown. That's not good. I hope I get this thing. You know why I'm wearing the super nitrile gloves. Yeah, it looks like it's got water in it too. Well, it's going to look like this transmission is probably going to need to be rebuilt. That's probably why this car was parked. More than likely. I'm trying to do this without... I'm trying to just crack it to where it'll drain. It's getting loose now. I don't want it to come gushing out, because gushing is not good. I don't want to get it all over the place. Come on, you stupid thing. I could just reach up in there and do it. I guess I will. I don't want to get my nitrile gloves crusty. I'm holding this up here to catch the initial gush. There we go. Alright, I'm gonna let that drain. And it's kind of pink, but it's kind of brown too. I smelt it on the dipstick, and it smelled kind of burnt. Alright, so we're gonna let that drain, and man, I made a mess. I'm gonna let that drain because that's what we got to do, and then I'm gonna clean my hands off, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, now that we've got our transmission draining, which it's really filling that thing up, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this smashed up old grill off. Now these grills are pretty easy to take off, well, at least a normal one is. There's a screw right up in here. There's a row of screws. I don't know if you can see that or not. There's one right there. There's one right there. There's one right there. You can kind of see it maybe. one over here, and then there's a couple up inside like there, up inside there. You can't really see it, but it's like right up in there someplace. There's a screw, and one's coming in from the side like that, and then there's a row of them going across the top. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off. I don't think I need to film that. You guys can pretty much see that, but that's the next step. Okay, now that we got the grill off the back there, the next step that we're going to do, let me lay on my back on Mr. Creeper here, is we're going to take this retaining strip off right there. It's on the back. It holds this rear rubber piece, the engine seal. The little bolts right there. It's a strip that comes off. We need to take that off, and then we need to take this rear cover off so we can get to the motor mount bolts. And then there's also a retaining strip up in there that above the muffler. Some people like to take the muffler off, but I don't, because I like to grab it when I'm taking the engine out. And then if we move over to this side, let me see if I can get a good angle on this. There's also a retaining strip. I'm trying to burn myself. There's a retaining strip right here. You can see the little bolt, and it goes the length of, it starts right here, and this one's kind of rusty. It's kind of rusty, but it starts right here, and it goes back, and it curves around down in here, and you'll see it once you get under there. And see, there's the rubber and the staples that hold the rubber on. But you got to take these retainers off of both sides and the rear right there to you release that rubber strip. And it's kind of, it's kind of tough sometimes. You got to scrape these bolts and stuff, get them off there. So anyway, I'm going to take those retainers off right now to release those rubber pieces, and I'll be back with you. Interesting thing to note about this car is that this car is a Virgin 63. You can see right there, that has never been disturbed. The retainer strips to take the engine out of this car have never been taken off. So the engine, I mean, if you look up in here, that retainer strip has never been removed. The undercoating is still over the top of it. So this car is a Virgin. It's a Virgin. It's never had its engine taken out. Oh my gosh! Don't see that very often for an old car. Here, the next thing we want to do is, now that we got those retainers off, we want to take these two little bolts out and remove this cover here, and that'll reveal the rear motor mount. And once that retainer's off, if you look at this is Virgin rubber right there, and none of these bolts have ever been taken off since this car was built in 1963. And I just think that's amazing that I'm the first one, evidently, who gets to play with this. Now a bunch of dirt and crap will probably fall out because it's a collection point. Rat nests, and look at all that crud. So that's the problem with the car like this. And then I mean, that's dirt from 1950 or 63. I mean, there's the motor mount. Look at that. It still has the factory cotter pin in it with the factory bend. That's just absolutely crazy. Okay, we'll go on to the next step. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, I cleaned up all my mess under here from the retainers and all that. The next thing we're going to do is disconnect these heater hoses here. You see there's a heater hose right there. And usually you just take this clamp off right there and pull them off, try to save them, but this one's so rusty and crusty that, I mean, it's already broken to pieces. It's just going to fall apart. So I'm just going to rip these things off of there and get them out of the way. And and after you get the heater hose out of the way, I'm going to remove that bolt right there. If you see, this is the filler tube, and it's bolted to, that's the filler tube for the tranny that we disconnected earlier, and it's bolted to the bell housing right there. So I'm going to go ahead and take that bolt out, and then that'll let the filler tube move, so when we drop the engine, the filler tube will slide up and down. I'm gonna put it back in the transmission just finger tight so it can move. So when we drop it the engine down, it can move out of that hole right there and it won't bind up. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Okay, we've got all the heater hoses out of the way now, and the next thing you're going to want to do on a power glide is we're going to want to start disconnecting stuff down in here. And what you have here is you have the throttle rod right here that goes up to the engine compartment. And I just want to take this little E-clip, take a screwdriver and pop that off of there, because we're going to replace that E-clip, and take it, push it out, if it'll push out like that. And then we're going to go ahead and remove that thing. Let me get up here. Now you gotta, let me show you something. You want to remove that because if you can see it right here, it's right here. It can get caught on the suspension components as you're pulling the engine out. So I always just go ahead and remove that throttle rod, as much as we can, and it'll just pop out up here on top and get that out of the way. And I'm going to take it completely out, but as you see right now, it's still in there a little bit. I can just let it hang like that and move it out of the way. And so we got that. And then you want to, excuse my French, you want to remove this rod here, which is the other throttle rod that comes from the belly pan here. So that'll free this TV rod up right there, so we can push it down. And then we'll take the shifter cable out. Also, what you want to do is you want to get up in here and you want to lube up these bolts right there, because we're going to take the whole cross member out of this car, and that's the transmission mount right there. And yesterday I lubed those up because we're going to pull those pins and all that. And another thing you want to do is you want to remove this spring here. You want to remove that spring from this cross member, because we're going to take this whole cross member out when we pull the car. Instead of undoing the transmission bolts that are up here, we're just going to do these two bolts and pull the whole cross member out. So I'm going to but you don't want to do it right now, because there's no jack under the engine. So that's going to be the last thing we do, is pull these bolts out. But I just wanted to show you that you gotta lube those nuts up to free them up on this rusty old beast. And make sure you undo that spring and these throttle rods. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Okay, we've got our throttle rods disconnected there. We've got our brake spring for the emergency brake cable disconnected from the cross member. And I'm going to go ahead and, now if you look at this, you can see that cross member is going to hit this throttle rod. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip tie it, and it's not going to hurt it, bend it a little bit, but I'm going to zip tie it to this jack stand to get it out of the way, so when we drop the engine it doesn't bend this thing all up. And it'll bend. It's a long old rod and it'll bend a little bit. So I'm just going to zip tie it to that jack stand. And the next thing we want to do now is we want to take this bolt out right there. You can see it right. Well, my hand's in the way. Maybe I can get it right there. Maybe I can do it with a screwdriver. But anyway, that bolt right there, and that's the shift cable. You can see the shift cable goes to the cross member right there, and it goes in that bolt right there. And what you want to do here is, this is kind of a critical thing, is you want to get up in there, and it's a hard place to get to for one, and there's always crap up in there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to blast that area with brake clean and a screwdriver and clean it up as best I can. And then I'm going to take the air hose and just blow all the dirt out of there. And then I'm going to try to clean up the best I can, and then I'm going to pull that bolt out, and that cable will slide right out of the cross member. It's kind of a bitch, but we can get it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I have a power glide plug here. I don't know if you can see that. It's a plug and a retainer that I made. And as soon as I pull that cable out of there, I'm going to stick this rubber plug in there with the retainer on it to keep, to keep the dirt out of that transmission, because dirt and automatic transmissions don't go together, and so you want to try to keep all that dirt out of there. So I'm gonna do that next. Okay, next we're gonna pull this bolt out of there. I've been cleaning and cleaning. That's about as clean as I can get it. So I'm going to undo this bolt, which they're never very tight. And hopefully you can see that. Hopefully nothing's in the way, but anyway, we're gonna take this transmission cable out. I'm going as fast as I can. I'm trying to hurry up and get this video done because it's going too long because I talk too much, and too much talking and not enough working, I think. Anyway, there's the factory original virgin bolt. And then you just want to, oh, this has got a clip on it. I probably want to, I'm going to have to unbolt that. We're going to unbolt this clip next is what we're going to do, so hold on. Okay, we've got that retainer strap off there, and now we're going to just pull this cable out. Let me get my stuff out of the way here. Maybe you can see it a little better. And we're just going to pull this cable, and it's just going to come right out of there. And it's kind of a bitch. You got to get it through the cross member here. You want to pull it out like that, because that cross member's coming out, but it's kind of a pain. There is a special way that it'll come out of there. You got to get it just right. Looks like there's a piece of wire or something in the way. Piece of dirt or something, I think. Come on, sucker. These things are always a pain. I'm wrestling with it. There's some kind of a wire or something in the way right there, it looks like. Maybe I can get some light on that. But anyway, you gotta... Oh, it's stuck in between the... I'm gonna have to bend that out of the way. Those are shims for the transmission, for the alignment, and it's stuck in between those shims. Sucker. Well, that's just stupid. I'm gonna have to try to get that, bend that shim out of the way. Get that out of there. Alright, well anyway, I'm gonna wrestle with this bitch. There we go. See, nothing's ever as easy. There's the transmission cable that's cracked as per usual, and we're gonna have to fix that. So anyway, that's the transmission cable out of the way. And then the next thing we're gonna want to do is we're gonna want to take the fuel line off right here. Now this is a 1927 fuel line, it looks like, and I'm just gonna cut it because it's hard as a rock, and I'll probably be wrestling with that for a while. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that fuel line, and then I'll get back with you. Okay, we've got all the throttle linkage and the power glide cable undone, and we've got you know, all the stuff surrounding the bottom of the engine undone, almost. There's one other thing on the other side that we're going to disconnect, but the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull these axles out, because the axle goes up into there. You can see right in there, goes up into the diff, and in order to take that engine out, we got to pull this axle out. And the way you do that is there's a little hole right there, and there's bolts up inside there. You can see the bolt right there, and there's another one down there. You can see that bolt. There's 4 bolts in there, and we want to pull those out. So let me put the hat cam on, put the gloves on, and I didn't videotape taking that brake drum off because there was lots of cussing and swearing involved, and I had used my dead blow hammer, and I used my real blow hammer wherever the real blow went. And you just got to beat on these things, and you know, I lube them up around here, and from the looks of those brakes, this thing has got 137,000 miles on it according to the dash, and there's a big giant ridge inside this thing, and when you get to a point where it starts grabbing the brake shoes, and you just got to go in there with like a pry thing and going like that and try to hold the brake shoe and beat on it, and you know, it would make this video an hour longer if I was to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my there's R2 3CPO. That's my vacuum cleaner. Every time I do something, everything falls off the car. But I'm going to use air tools now, and I've soaked those bolts, those 4 bolts in 30-30, which is just like WD-40. And you just want to go around, you want to crack those things loose, and then you just stick it through that hole right there, and you can just go right around each one of them and crack them loose. They're really not that tight for being however old they are. And crack that loose and go to the next one and crack that loose. Well, they're kind of loose actually, and then we just gotta rat-a-tat them out. Move it to the next one. I'll put those in the coffee can later. Move it to the next one down in there. There's lock washers on those things too. Okay. So we got our nuts there. We'll just throw those in this brake drum for now. And then what you're going to want to do is, when we pull that out of there, I had some little things. Hold on a second. What I use is I either use a old idler bearing or early model fan bearing, or one of these little caps for the blinker thing that I took apart. And what these are for is, once you pull that axle out, you want to stick this in the diff to plug the hole. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now while I'm sitting here. Okay, this is take number 2 on that. First time I pulled this off, the whole backing plate and stuff came off with it because the bearing was rusted to the back of the backing plate because it's never been off. But anyway, after you get those bolts out, the way it's supposed to work is you just slide this axle out and then you stick this guy right here up in that hole. So I'm going to do that right now, and you just put your hand up in there like this and you grab it and you pull this axle out and you pull it out of the diff and free it up, and you just pull that out like that. And then we want to reach up in here, hopefully you can see that on the hat cam, and we want to plug that hole. See, the diff fluid's leaking out already. We want to plug that seal with that, and that'll keep it from the diff from leaking fluid all out. It leaked a little bit on the floor already. And so anyway, that's how it has to be, like that. And we're going to go ahead and do it on the other side now and get these axles out of there. So the next step after that is one more little thing to disconnect, and we're pulling the engine. So I'll be right back with you. Okay, got our axles out now. Everything under there is disconnected. We got this axle out, which this one came out a lot easier than the other one. And now there's only one more thing left to do here, and that is disconnect the speedometer cable, which is that guy right there. And the reason I do that last is because now that this axle's out of the way, we can get up in there, we can do it easy. So we're gonna, all you gotta do is take a pair of pliers and get on there, and you don't want to really, usually they're not very tight, and all you gotta do is just, this one's just finger tight. So I can probably just take that off with my fingers. And this is the speedometer drive. Early models have them hooked to the diff, and late models have them hooked to the front wheel. So this is a change. There's actually quite a bit of differences taking these. Okay, so this is loose, and we want to pull that out and get that out of the way. Okay, so we've got pretty much everything underneath here taken apart. We got the tranny drained, we got all the linkages tied up, I got the zip tied on here, all the throttle linkages are disconnected, the shift cable is out, the spring for the return spring for the emergency brake cable's undone, the axles are out, heater hoses are done, fuel line up here is cut. The only thing that came out of that was dust. And then we're going to take this nut out. There's in the skid plate, there's a bolt here, and I'm going to go ahead and take that out too. And because our supercalifragilisticexpialidocious engine cradle is going to bolt up to that. So we're going to take that sucker out. Hope I don't hit the camera with this crazy looking thing. And the next step is going to be to put the engine removal jack up in here and take this engine out. So the fun's going to begin. Hold on one second. Okay, now it's time to get your 1950s Woodell 700 Corvair factory engine cradle removal jack out and hook it up. And this jack, I bet you, is taken out and put in more Corvair engines than any jack on the planet, because my father used it when he was a service bay tech for GM, and then when he ran his Dave's Corvair service, and then I helped him, and this jack has never been out of service and it's completely wore out. And let me put on the hat cam and I'll show you how it works. And what we're going to do is we're going to jack it up, and I use me a wobbly socket here because you can tilt it any way you want, make it go up and down. So what we want to do is we want to line it up here at the same angle as the pan, and then it just fits right up in there. Whoops, I keep an oil can with this thing because it leaks. And then you just want to jack it right up into place, make sure it clears everything, and then, well, it's not cleared on that side, it just fits right up in there. And then you take that bolt that you took out and you stick it up in here and you tighten it up. And my engine cradles that I built do the same thing, and you just snug that up a little bit. And then we want to put a little bit of pressure on it. You can see it jacked up a little bit. Now we're going to take the front motor mount bolts out. So hold on one second. We got our jack in place with some pressure on it, and we'll take the front motor mount or transmission mounts out. Okay, we're back under the car again, and I don't know if you could see this or not, but I took this one out already, and all I got left to do is take that one out. And I loosened them up, and you want to kind of, hope you can see this, you kind of want to stay out from underneath it just in case the jack lets loose or whatever. It's going to drop a little bit when I pull this bolt. You can see it's loose now. Sounds like my gun's screwed up. Alright, well, there's the two transmission bolts. And we'll go around here to the back side now and take this last one. Of course, my little gun thing has to start acting up right here when... Come here. Well, it's about time to go to Harbor Freight and buy me another one, I think. Anyway, we're going to take this rear motor mount bolt out now. Let me get the tools over here. Get the light so you can see what's going on. Cat figures. Stupid thing. Anyway, we'll get us a wrench here. I think it's a 9/16. Now all we got left to do is pull this one bolt. Nope, it's bigger than that. And we're going to pull this last bolt, and then we can drop this engine. Okay. Now we'll disconnect this thing, and now that engine's just being held up by that jack. And I'll get back with you. I'm going to move some stuff out of the way so when we drop this, we can move it over and put it on the engine stand. 1 second. Okay. Now what we're going to do is put on my glove. All this stuff's disconnected. I think everything underneath's disconnected. And we're going to start lowering this down a little bit and see what happens. We're just going to go a little bit at a time here. Wiggle it around. See if everything's good. It looks all good to me. Go a little bit more. Then pull it back some. Seems all loose. Everything looks good up here. Now you see why I left that loose, so it can come out of there. I think everything's disconnected. I'm 99% sure, but I'll find out by whatever I rip out when I let this thing down more. And let's see. Looks all good, looks loose. Pull this thing down a little bit more. I think the front tranny's hooked on something. Maybe. Look up in there. It looks like the starter's hitting. And we'll just let this thing down and roll it out of there. I need to pull it. That's why I leave this guy on there. Go down some more. Looks like everything's cleared. And we're just going to pull this power pack right out of there just like that. And there we go. And then we're going to jack it up a little bit and level it out some. With our tool, with this, I want to get down in there with the wobbly goblin. Oh, wrong way. See that? And now we can just drag it over here like a skateboard if we want. We'll just drag it over here and we'll jack it up real high and we'll put a GM engine stand under it. Whoops, I'm wrecking stuff with the exhaust pipe. But there you go. Alright, let me get this jacked up and then I'll put the stand under it, and that's pretty much how you get those suckers out. I haven't seen hide no hair of them mice lately, so just 1 second, we'll put it on the stand. Okay, there it is, jacked up off the ground, and you might be saying, gee whiz, Dave, that's scary looking, that big old engine sitting up on that jack like that. And I mean, it's pretty much to my belly, and my belly's pretty big. So anyways, yeah, it's just the way it's done. And then what we do here is we put this hat camera back on, and we'll grab this replica GM stand. This is one of the ones my son welded together for me, and they actually take quite a bit of work to build these things. There's a lot of moving parts and things you got to get right, and I put wheels on this one so I can roll the power pack around, and all you do is just roll it underneath this thing, and these little tabs go on the bell housing like right there, and then this piece over here flips up like that, and you stick a bolt through it like that. When you, let me see if I can find the hole. You stick the bolt through there, which locks it in place, and then you take a bolt and a nut and you bolt the engine mount right to the stand like that. And then you can take the super wrench and just tighten it up a little bit, and then you can start letting this jack down, and you kind of got to watch it and make sure that the bell housing is in its little saddle, and it looks like it is on that side, and it is on that side. And then you can just undo that bolt to where it's bolted to it's actually the oil pump housing. You undo that. That actually keeps the whole engine from sliding off when it's at an angle and all that stuff. Didn't realize I had it screwed in there so far, but and then that lets loose, and then you just let your jack down like that. Put your bolt in there because you want to save that bolt for later, and then you can push that out of the way, and now you got your engine on the GM stand, and you can just roll it wherever you want to. We're going to push it up here so we can, well, I need to grab the front of it. It's easier to pull from the front. Anyway, you can just roll it around and do all your work on it. So anyway, this video's way too long, and this is Dave Motohead, and that's pretty much how you take the engine out of a 63, a virgin engine that is. This engine's never been out before, and I just think that's kind of an amazing thing, and I'm a little bit winded. It's a lot of work actually on these things. It's not a lot of work, but it's work. So if you just follow through this video and go step by step, should be pretty easy for you too. This is Dave Motorhead, and thanks for watching.